The coronavirus disease COVID-19 is an infectious disease caused by a new strain of coronavirus. This virus and disease were unknown before the outbreak began in Wuhan, China, in December 2019.
On 30 January 2020, the Philippine Department of Health reported the first case of COVID-19 in the country with a 38-year-old female Chinese national. On 7 March, the first local transmission of COVID-19 was confirmed. COVID-19 is not only a global pandemic and public health crisis, it has also severely affected the global economy and financial markets. Significant reduction in income, a rise in unemployment, and disruptions in transportation, service, and manufacturing industries. The Philippines economy suffered a deep recession in 2020 due to the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, with GDP contracting by 9.6% year-on-year.
The government expected jobs to come back as the lockdowns eased, but the figures show that the pandemic deeply scarred the labor market. In January 2021, the PSA sits at 4 million Filipinos were unemployed. This is higher than the 3.8 million unemployed in October 2020 and the 2.4 million in January 2020.
Used to earn around $300 a month as a jeepney driver. That was barely enough to feed his family, but he says somehow they were able to get by. But life became much worse 2 months ago when the lockdown was imposed by the government to stop the spread of coronavirus. He's unable to work and pay for the house rent in Manila, so they live like this now, in a jeepney, begging in the street just to feed his family.
The impact of this health crisis is causing particular suffering to those who had very little to begin with.
The government is giving cash aid to millions of impoverished families, but leaders admit resources are already stretched and much of the government's so-called calamity fund has been used up. Those like Julius who have always lived on the fringes say they feel left out. If the virus doesn't kill them, they say, hunger most likely will.
Rodrigo Duterte's economic team is once again pushing for safety reopening the economy further amid rising COVID-19 cases. As the Philippines Statistics Authority reported dismal January employment data. COVID-19 crisis in education. Back in June 2020, Philippines officials announced that tens of millions of children in the archipelago will not be allowed back to school until a coronavirus vaccine was available. Unfortunately, millions of Filipinos live in deep poverty and do not have access to computers at home, which is also key to the viability of online classes.
14-year-old Cortero loves art, especially drawing happy faces. But the last few months were spent not inside a classroom, but in the fields of Pampanga province in the central Philippines. He's farming every day, just so he can save $150 to buy a cell phone he needs for the newly implemented rule of distance learning.
But we have no money. My mother has no work and my father is a welder.
The Aitas indigenous tribe is considered one of the earliest inhabitants in the Philippines. But for decades, their population has dwindled and now live in scattered mountainous parts of the Luzon region.
Sapang Uwak is a village of about 900 people, and just like most indigenous communities across the country, they have suffered dispossession and displacement for decades. But the coronavirus pandemic adds another layer of difficulty for the Aita families here.
The Philippine government has implemented a distance learning program for all schools to help stop the spread of coronavirus. Education officials say it is unlikely that schools will reopen until a vaccine is available, which means Filipino children will have to study from home with electricity, a laptop, and internet connection. That's a major problem in a country where more than half of all families live below the poverty poverty line and where millions have already lost their jobs because of the months-long quarantine lockdown. It's an even bigger dilemma for indigenous tribes like the Aitas, long suffering from discrimination and abject poverty. Many live without electricity or running water. To have a laptop and a working internet connection every day at home is almost unimaginable for them.
According to the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, UNESCO, as of the 17th of March 2021, some 171 million pupils enrolled in pre-primary, lower secondary, and upper secondary levels of education.
To prevent the spread of COVID-19, stay safe. Wash your hands